Christian activist groups like Alliance for Defending Freedom and the National Right to Life have lobbied lawmakers, judges, even Supreme Court justices for years to overturn Roe. Since they got the job done with the Dobbs decision last year, 15 states across the country have banned most abortions. In Ohio, specifically, a 6-week abortion ban went into effect just hours after Roe was overturned. A few months later, a judge blocked that ban, which means that, at least for now, abortion remains legal there until 22 weeks of pregnancy. But reproductive rights groups are unwilling to wait until the next threat to abortion access to take action. Instead, they have mobilized to shore up the right to an abortion in Ohio. They have proposed an amendment to the state constitution that would ensure the right for everyone to, quote, make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions up to and including abortion until the fetus is viable on its own. The amendment would also ban the state from interfering directly or indirectly with anyone's reproductive health decisions, with few exceptions. But groups like Center for Christian Virtue and Ohio Right to Life have lobbied the Republican-led legislature to help make it harder to get that measure on the November ballot. In March, a state Senate committee heard from members of Christian advocacy groups with mission statements like, quote, advocating for public policy that reflects the truth of the gospel. In this case, they were advocating to change the voting threshold needed to pass a state constitutional amendment to require a 60% supermajority of Ohio voters, not just a simple majority. They were successful. The legislature is allowing voters to cast ballots in August to decide whether a 60% supermajority will be required for a constitutional amendment to pass. Now, that's despite the fact just months ago, Republican lawmakers voted against adding a special election in August. Holding a late summer vote is an apparent victory. That's because within the past year, 6 states, including states as red as Kansas, have voted on ballot measures and amendments in support of the right to abortion. And today in Ohio, abortion rights advocates got one step closer to joining those states. They filed more than 700,000 signatures to put a constitutional amendment on Ohio's November ballot, almost double what they needed. And in Ohio, where 59% of the electorate supports enshrining abortion rights in the state constitution, that amendment seems likely to pass in November, unless the Republican 60% supermajority measure passes next month. Joining us now, Dr. Marcela Acevedo, co-founder of Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights, one of the groups aiding the ballot initiative signature collection, and David Pepper, a former chair of the Ohio Democratic Party and author of Saving Democracy, a user's manual for every American. Dr. Acevedo, David, thank you both so much for being here. Dr. Acevedo, I want to begin with you. State officials still have to review the signatures, but it looks like this measure to amend the state constitution very likely to appear on the November ballot. Are you surprised that you got as many signatures as you did? How difficult was this effort?
You know, thank you for having me, Alex. And overall, we were told it was going to be heavy lifting. About a year ago, when we founded the Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights and Protect Choice Ohio, we knew we had heavy lifting. Folks thought that it would be hard to gather this many signatures in such a short amount of time. And we started from the ground up. You know, we wrote the amendment, we put up the infrastructure, we gathered folks of all sorts of expertise to get this done. And in just over 12 weeks, we've reached 700,000 people in every single one of Ohio's 88 counties. I don't want to say that I'm surprised, because I'm not. Ohioans are for pro-choice. They are for having their own families make their own decisions. And we could feel this on the ground. When we talked to people, when we went to group meetings, when we spoke to constituents all over the state, this is what we heard. We heard them say that they wanted to be responsible for their own medical decisions.
David, there's now a separate ballot measure the voters will decide on in a separate special election in August. Voters are going to decide whether the threshold for approving a state constitutional amendment should be increased to 60% of the vote. We know from recent polling that 59% of Ohio voters are in favor of protecting abortion in the state constitution. 59-60, is that a coincidence?
No, they knew full well that this is an unpopular their side is unpopular. They know that Ohio is a pro-choice state. They're scared to death of what happened in Kansas and other states, especially that story of the 10-year-old rape victim having to go to Indiana. Truly toxic in a state like Ohio. So they're trying to change the rules, rig the results beforehand. I don't think it'll work, but people do need to see that this August election is incredibly important, and they're hoping for a low turnout. They're hoping that no one sees it. But my hope is that people see the connection. If they do, my hope is we overcome it in August with a no vote and then vote yes on the amendment that the signatures came in for today.
David, here's the thing. Earlier this year, Ohio Republicans decided that August special elections were too costly to be worthwhile. They passed a law effectively ending August elections, but they scheduled a special election for next month anyway. I wonder if you were surprised by that apparent hypocrisy.
No, I mean, this is an absolutely lawless bunch. This is the most corrupt state house in the country. The former speaker was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison just last week for the biggest bribery scandal in Ohio history. They're sitting in a gerrymandered set of districts that violate the Ohio Constitution. They break the law all the time here. And in this case, knowing that they would lose in November, they broke their own law that said August special elections shouldn't be allowed. Our tainted Supreme Court upheld it. We literally have a situation of an election being held on a date that currently violates the Ohio Revised Code. But that's what's happening in all these states around the country. We are reaching a level of lawlessness, and once it's reached once, they go again and again. And that's why, in some cases, even court challenges that to any common sense, 12-year-old would make sense. In states like Ohio, don't go that far. So now it's in the hands of the people. It's clearly bizarre, lawless. We just need to show up in big numbers in August and end this nonsense, and then show up in November and vote yes in the kind of 59 or 60% numbers that's happening here in Ohio, in Kansas, even in Kentucky, for goodness sakes. The Dobbs decision said this should go in the hands of the people. As flawed as that decision was, it said it should go in the hands of the people. And what these Ohio legislators are doing is they're doing everything they can to keep it from going in the hands of the people, because they know the people don't agree with what they're doing.
Right. I mean, Dr. Azevedo, in the past year, states like Michigan voted to add amendments to protect the right to abortion. State like Kansas voted against amendments that would have established no right to abortion in the state. The patchwork of abortion access in this country, it seems like it comes down to which party controls the legislature, who serves as governor, and whether voters can, in fact, vote on amendments. I wonder, as a physician, how it feels to know that decisions that are being made in the room with your patient aren't necessarily being dictated by science or the gold standard of medical care, but rather the political reality of any state at any given moment.
Exactly. You got it. That is what was frustrating to us. And that's what happened right away. Myself, my colleagues, we were all worried of the decisions that we would have to make that made no sense, that endangered our patients' lives, that, to be honest, took the dignity away from our patients. And because of that, this was not something that could wait till 2024. This was not something that we could just sit. And we were thankful that in Ohio, we do have that ability. The citizens-led ballot initiative was something that we could pursue. Bring the power back to our patients, bring the power back to our people, because I cannot practice medicine if the politicians and the government around me tie my hands.
David, when you look at the number of signatures that were able to be collected, that is a promising start. I wonder if you feel in the lead up to both August and November, if Democrats are properly organized and resourced to do what they need to do to get this over the finish line.
I mean, I honestly think that the Republicans here breathed life into a Democratic Party that had a tough last November. And so the organizing that's taken place, the incredible effort by the doctors' organization, so many other partnerships happening. The Ohio Democratic Party, I think, gathered more than 100,000 signatures. So I think, as bad as all this is, and it's bad, and the results are as horrible as that 10-year-old rape victim, if we do not succeed here, having to go to Indiana. There's an opportunity here of waking a sleeping giant that again, exposes not just how extreme this legislature is, but how lawless they are. And at a certain point, I think we have an opportunity now to make that very clear. It's painfully clear to a lot of Ohioans. And so I think they've given an opportunity when otherwise it might have been a tougher year to get organized. So you have an August opportunity to get organized. You have a November opportunity to get organized. And then next year, we have a Senate race and 3 Supreme Court seats, which will be pivotal to interpreting, however, the constitutional amendments that are passing. So this gives an opportunity to really energize and organize. It may not have been there otherwise. So let's take the opportunity, even though it's in a sort of a result of some really disturbing behavior by a really lawless group of people.
And we will all be watching. Dr. Marcelo Azevedo and David Pepper, thank you both so much for your time and for your expertise tonight.